"Oh, Amy, have you washed these sheets properly?" "Bitch, they smell like you," says the father-in-law as he lies down on the bed sheets. If we were living together, I wonder if I'd be facing such bizarre situations every day. Just imagining it gives me goosebumps. This is a story about how a disagreement over living together led to a turning point in my life. My name is Amy. I'm a 60-year-old divorcee. Well, to me, 60 is just the beginning, regardless of what others might think. I've learned to use computers, something I used to be bad at, all on my own after reading a book about it. No matter how I get older, I don't want to give up and say it's because of my age. I want to remain a woman with a never-ending thirst for knowledge and growth. Don't lose to the younger generation. No. After all, I still consider myself pretty young. However, there was a time when I faced a major challenge. It happened when we finally paid off our home mortgage. This was about a decade ago. When I was in my 20s, my husband, Robert, and I pooled our money together and bought a house. We were finally seeing the end of our mortgage payments. My husband asked, "What do you think about living together?" "What do you mean by living together?" "You know what I mean, living with my parents?" "I've told you before, it might be difficult." "Why? Your mother doesn't think highly of me." "Like living together would be hard for both of us." "It's better to stay as it is now. We won't know unless we try, right? Once we start living together, it's going to be hard to stop. But you'll always avoid challenges." It's a challenge. After getting married, my husband often brought up, "What do you think about living together with my parents?" Before we got married, he was firmly against living with them. That's why I felt secure. And yet, after we got married, my husband gradually and sneakily started to shift to the opinion that living together would be nice. What a fraud. I later learned that his mother had guilt-tripped him, saying, "Aren't you worried about leaving your aging parents alone in their old age?" Somewhere along the line, a sense of responsibility grew in him, thinking that living together was a way of being dutiful as a son. I wished he felt refusing to live with them was his duty as a husband. I get that parents are important, but I've told him countless times that his mother and I don't get along. As a result of holding back my frustrations and my husband's lack of considerations, our relationship began to deteriorate, but he didn't seem to care. As we were close to finishing our mortgage payments and the remaining loan was decreasing, his requests to live together intensified. I had been dismissing his talk until now, but this was alarming. I started feeling a real sense of crisis. Then one day, the doorbell rang, and when I went to answer, I was shocked. With a big smile on her face, my mother-in-law and father-in-law stood there. It was 7 a.m. on a Sunday. The morning light illuminated their smiling faces, making them look divine. Nope, that was definitely not indeed. Unexpectedly, as I stood there in shock at their sudden visit, my husband came from behind, greeted his parents with welcome backs, and urged them to come inside. Welcome back. Wait, welcome back. When you visit someone's home, isn't it excuse us for the sudden visit? and isn't the host supposed to say welcome? Then suddenly, I remembered my husband's oft-repeated phrase. What about living with my parents, hon? Oh no. Suckers, confused, but I followed my husband and in-laws back into the house. As soon as I entered, I noticed my mother-in-law closely inspecting our dish cabinet. I couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing?" Next to a ghost? "Oh, there are quite a few scratches here. It seems wasteful to replace them. Amy, aren't you a bit careless? You should take better care of things." What? I'm the one who bought those. I took a closer look at the dishes she was scrutinizing, but I couldn't see any scratches. Reason maybe to her aging eyes. The wood grain looked like scratches, but I couldn't see anything amiss, even with my own aging eyes. But my mother-in-law had always had a knack for picking out little things to criticize me for. As for why she could never come to like the wife who stole her precious son from her, I could never quite grasp it. Regardless, I brushed off her usual nitpicking. Suddenly, I realized I didn't see my father-in-law. At the same moment, I heard noises from the second floor. That's with a bad feeling and a sense of impending dread. I went upstairs, only to find my father-in-law sprawled out on not my husband's, but my bed, and he was face down. Startled, I screamed, "Oh, Amy, did you wash these sheets properly? I can smell your scent." "No way. That's really inappropriate. Please refrain from such behavior." In that instant, the words that came out of my mouth were quite harsh, without any sugarcoating. "What's with the attitude? You're just a daughter-in-law. Being a daughter-in-law has nothing to do with this. Why are you smelling someone else's bed? I was just checking if they were properly cleaned." "There's no need for that. Air it is. As someone who will live here, I need to check these things." What are you talking about? It's worrisome thinking of living with such a disrespectful daughter-in-law. Living together, as my father-in-law uttered those unexpected words, my husband and mother-in-law appeared behind me. My husband said, "I thought I heard some noise, so you're here. Your father just mentioned living together. What's that about?" Exactly what it sounds like. "What do you mean exactly? We're finishing up the house loan this month, right?" "Yes, but..." "So, I've decided that we'll live here with my parents." "What? Why would you decide that on your own? I've been asking you about it for a long time, haven't I? I've told you. I don't want to live with someone who smells people's beds." "Did you say that?" I can't believe this man. Suddenly, I felt my hands clenching into tight fists. That whether you like it or not doesn't matter. Once the mortgage is paid, you've served your purpose to us," she said with a smirk. "What?" I repeated the question. "That's right. You're no longer needed. Get out." At that, my father-in-law made a shooing gesture towards me, similar to shooing away a dog, and flashed a sinister grin. "I see. But to me in-laws, it seems I haven't been a daughter-in-law for a long time, but rather a wallet to pay off the mortgage." My husband's income alone isn't very reassuring, and having two earners is ideal for quickly paying off a new house. The reason my mother-in-law, who values her precious son, tolerated our marriage and persisted in wanting to live together for so many years was probably to do something like this in the end. Once the mortgage is paid off, she can live with her beloved son again. Like in my mother-in-law's future plans, if I was there, she'd probably exploit me. And if I wasn't, she'd think she served her purpose, so it's okay. The more I piece together the past events and the current situation, the angrier I became. Of course, I was wrong for not taking any action until now. But this house is partly mine too. Peace in my mood, which had been overshadowed by despair and irritation, instantly brightened. Okay, I understand. The most surprised by my calm response was my husband. He probably didn't expect me to leave that easily. Maybe he thought I would cry and cling to him. Until the very last moment I left the house, my husband kept asking me to reconsider. But I didn't pay attention to him and successfully divorced him. A month has passed since then. After the divorce, having lost my home, I enjoyed a carefree life living in a hotel. One day, my ex-mother-in-law contacted me. She insists that we meet no matter what. Although I could ignore her request, thinking it was troublesome. I had an idea about what this might be and decided to meet her with a touch of excitement. When I arrived at the cafe where we were supposed to meet, I saw the faces of the in-laws family looking quite demoralized. Seeing me, my mother-in-law tearfully said, "Amy, thank you for coming. All of you are here. What do you want from your ex-daughter-in-law? Yesterday, we received a notification about property division from you. Of course, we divorced. Did you think I would do nothing? Well, just a bit. But things are different now." But different how? As I asked, my husband, who had been hanging his head, seemed even more wilted. "Robert's company has gone bankrupt." I knew it was only a matter of time. I clapped my hands and said with a smile, I knew it. "Amy, what do you mean it was only a matter of time?" In recent years, my husband's earnings have been declining. Just last month, there was a delay in his salary payment. Those are signs of a company's impending bankruptcy. Is that so? Why didn't you tell us? Robert, kissing her beloved son, my mother-in-law interrogated him with a fierce expression. My husband let out a sharp intake of breath and tensed up. I didn't think it would go bankrupt. Any sensible person would have noticed. You're just stupid. My sharp retort made my husband exclaim in surprise and look even more shocked. I quickly added, "So, you all didn't gather here just to say our son is unemployed so we can't divide the property, did you?" What's this all about? Everyone hesitated for a moment. The one who finally spoke was my husband. The house burned down. What? The house. I get it. But why? Because of my dad's careless handling of his cigarette. FT. You really lose out living with your parents, don't you? I couldn't help myself but burst out laughing. To be honest, I'd imagined that my husband would become unemployed. when we divorced. And thought, I don't want to support a selfish, unemployed husband. If we lived together, only the elderly parents on their pension would suffer. I might even be made to care for them. That's why I thought the divorce was a good deal for me. But I never expected that our house would have been burnt down because of my father-in-law. This story sounds interesting to share. I felt a mischievous spirit from my childhood come alive. Ah, that was funny. Sorry. But yeah, that's tough. My folks also let go of our family home, so we don't even have a place to live now. I don't know where to start. So you've really become a homeless and unemployed man. Can you please stop saying it like that? I'm living in a hotel now too, so I'm technically homeless as well. But I did buy a house, so I'll be moving out of that situation soon. What? In my words, I bought a house. Everyone perked up. He keep getting hooked on it. You know the high-rise condo near the station, right? I'm going to live there soon. A high-rise condo. Both my in-laws and my husband's eyes changed instantly. I guess high-rise condos are still something people envy. For me, it wasn't that I wanted a high-rise condo, but after getting divorced and becoming an older single woman, I wanted to live securely. But see, I wasn't even interested in the view. I heard that waiting for the elevator on high floors was stressful, so I just chose a lower floor. We want to live there too. Can we live with you? Amy? Please. Let's forget the past. Oh, that's a great idea. I beg you. Amy. I expected this, but it was shocking to see my ex-in-laws asking so blatantly to live in their former daughter-in-law's house. Their audacity was mind-boggling. I wondered if my father-in-law might even set a high-rise condo on fire. I would like to help, but after all, to all of you, I was just a wallet to pay off the mortgage. When I spoke in a sarcastic tone, my in-laws hastily responded, "No, that's not true," and began to overly praise me. "We've always admired your housekeeping skills. The house becomes lively when you're around. When you're around, you're thoughtful and beautiful." He's compared to that. Our son was pampered growing up, and now he's unemployed. He's hopeless. Watching his parents say this, their precious son was speechless. Well, no matter how much they love their son, if he can't support them, he's indeed useless to them. Such terrible parents. Well, living with this many people might not be too bad. My words surprised my former in-laws and husband. It'd be lively. Amy, what do you mean by that? Just what I said. Keep seeing me smile, everyone's faces lit up. But it'd be awkward to see my ex-husband again. I said this, and the mother-in-law responded, "If that's all, don't worry about that. We don't have to let Robert live at Amy's house." My ex-mother-in-law laughed, but said firmly, and my ex-husband couldn't hide his surprise. Even the father-in-law chimed in, "That's right. Robert, you should live somewhere else. We'll be taken care of by Amy." Wait. Day. Wait, only me? Because we have a pension and can at least pay Amy for meals. But you can't pay anything. I was about to say, you only intend to pay for meals when you're imposing high-rise condo payments on me. But I kept silent and chose to watch the parent-child split unfold just as I had planned. Come, you foolish money-monger, dance in the palm of my hand. If you guys have a pension, then why don't you rent your place by yourselves? How can we afford that when you're unemployed and broke? What if something happens to us in our old age? What old age? You're already there, you old geezer. How rude. We're still young. If you're so young, why don't you work and save money for the future? I can't even take a bath in my current situation, let alone go to a job interview. You could bathe in a river. Why are you always thinking about only yourself? What? Don't tell people what you can't do. Beat the old failure who set our house on fire. Who's the real failure here, you jobless son? We don't need you anymore. We're cutting ties. Fine by me. Ignoring your son like that? Just in front of that exchange, the mother-in-law tried to calm the situation by saying, "Hey, are you serious?" Be to the father-in-law. However, the husband's words seemed to have truly angered my father-in-law, and he showed no signs of retracting the estrangement. On the contrary, he even jokingly said to me, "Your room will become more spacious," with a smile. He seems completely intent on burning the high-rise condo. Rise condo? No. It's not that. He fully intends to live in someone else's house. Are you misunderstanding something? Plan, with a bright smile. I asked, and everyone turned to me startled. The size of the room hasn't changed from the beginning, right? I never said I wanted to live with you all. What do you mean? Amy, what I mean is, I only mentioned that living with this many people would be lively. I never once said we would live together. At that moment, the mother-in-law exclaimed, "But that was the impression you gave." It was good to see you guys choose a condo life over your son. Now, Robert, you've always wanted to live with such people while neglecting me. Don't you realize how absurd your proposal was? Haven't you woken up even after our house burned down? As I questioned with a hint of sternness. Robert glared at his parents. Amy's right. I thought taking care of my parents was filial piety. But it seems they never cared about me in the first place. Wait, Robert, I was wrong. I'll take back the disownment. So you just want to rely on your son again since you can't live with me? No, that's not it really. You seem quite flustered. Don't you watching my playful teasing and the flustered father-in-law? Robert's temper began to flare up. I don't want parents like you either. Disownment is fine. As the parents desperately tried to plead with him, the Brit had none of it. Instead, he turned to me and said, "Thanks to you." Amy, I really want to start over. Really? Are you serious? I'm serious. You did all this because you care about me and wanted me to wake up, didn't you? Stop it. Such a naive idea. All I thought was it would be funny if, after being so chummy with your parents and wanting to live together, abandoning your wife, you'd end up clashing with them. Well, from now on, I only see you as a means to asset division. Wait, asset division. You still plan to claim assets from me in this situation. I don't care about it. Of course, I will. I just signed the divorce papers quickly to move out back then. But I can still claim for asset division after the divorce, so I plan to get my fair share. Keep that in mind. Hold on, aren't you still in love with me? Why would I fall for an unemployed vagabond like you? You're living in a fantasy world. You're kidding. After that, my husband, not managing to win me over, became furious. He blamed everything on his parents, lashing out at them. I escaped before the police arrived. Following that, just as I declared, I took a substantial chunk in the asset division. And to be honest, it wasn't a huge amount, but finally, all ties with my husband were severed. My unemployed husband's savings took a hit due to the asset division, and without any ties to his parents, he seemed to struggle. He did odd jobs, stayed in cheap inns, and sometimes slept in parks, leading a drifter's life. Thus, given his age, he couldn't find stable employment and lived almost like a vagabond. His parents didn't bother to mend ties with their struggling son. They seemed content living off their pension, essentially abandoning their son. They remained a couple who only thought of themselves, even after all these years. As for me, I'd been investing even before the divorce, so I lead a fairly affluent life now. Recently, I decided to master computers and started attending a local programming class. There aren't any students my age there. In fact, most are children. It feels like I've gained many grandchildren, which is delightful. I wasn't blessed with children, but in this way, I feel blessed with kids, and it warms my heart. One of the students, Lisa, a little elementary school girl, wanted to learn knitting. I started teaching her during class breaks. Soon, other children joined in, creating a delightful scene. Life has thrown many things at me, but there's still a road ahead. I intend to lead a life that's fulfilling and joyful in my own way. My in-laws run a screw factory. My father-in-law, Bill, who is the president, and my husband, who is set to be his successor, are arrogant and inept leaders. The factory is actually sustained by my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. I invited this family to the diner my mother runs. There, my father-in-law and my husband spewed rude remarks, resulting in my father kicking them out. Still feeling unsettled, my father decided to execute a certain plan for the sake of Megan and Amy. My name is Diane, and I'm 27 years old. My husband, is 3 years older than me. We've been married for a year, but we don't have any children yet. As mentioned, my in-laws run a screw factory. My father-in-law took over the business from his father, and now my husband is set to be the next successor. And apart from them, the family consists of my mother-in-law, Ventadian, and sister-in-law, Amy. Megan provides essential support in the office, ensuring that the staff can work smoothly. I also work as a clerk, and she has been incredibly helpful to me. Meanwhile, Amy works hard on the factory floor, sweating alongside the other workers. Both Megan and Amy are adored and respected by the employees. On the other hand, the president, my father-in-law, Bill, and vice president, my husband, Tom, have zero trust from the staff. They rarely visit the factory floor, perhaps once a week if we're lucky, and spend most of their time in the office, acting arrogant. Many employees resent these inept leaders. The stabilizing presence of Megan and Amy is immeasurably important. I learned from Megan that Amy has always been a meticulous and hardworking person, gifted with skilled hands. Conversely, my husband is clumsy and fickle, easily giving up on tasks he initiates. Although most employees believed Amy would inherit the factory, Bill chose my husband. The reason? Simply because he thought it's customary for men to inherit businesses. Upon hearing this from Megan, I thought it was ludicrous to let someone without skill or trust take over such an essential factory. The reason I ended up marrying such a man was that I was deceived by his outward appearance. We met through mutual friends. To a friend, concerned about my long single status, introduced me to him at a gathering. As on the outside, he seemed impressive, passionately speaking about taking over the family business and making their screws internationally renowned. I was attracted to my husband because he looked so cool. It seemed my husband also took a liking to me as he asked me out on several dates and eventually formally proposed that we become a couple. Half a year later, he proposed marriage, to which I responded with an affirmative okay. When I went to greet his family, Bill spoke passionately about screws, and I could feel the pride he had in his work. They treated us to a meal, and as I was helping Megan with the cleanup, she discreetly asked, "Are you really sure about marrying Tom?" with a somewhat meaningful tone. As I struggled to respond, she hurriedly said, "Never mind. I just wanted to ask." I later regretted not properly addressing her question and listening to her concerns after getting married. What did he mean by internationally renowned screws? He should first learn to be a respectable person in society. That's on a free Sunday. I got permission from my husband to visit my family home. My family home primarily operates a diner, managed mainly by my mother. My father also helps out during busy hours. Of a charitable instance, the diner only serves lunch, so I timed my visit after their lunch service. After their lunch service had ended, my sneaky plan was to get treated to a meal there. No matter when I eat it, my mother's cooking is always delicious, and I often find myself going for seconds, which I usually don't do. After finishing the meal, my mother asked, "How have you been lately?" Bobby C, I decided to answer her honestly. Well, my job isn't that busy, but Megan and Amy seem to be having a tough time. I've been thinking it'd be nice if I could cheer them up somehow. Then her mother suggests, why not invite them here? I'll go the extra mile and cook lots of delicious dishes. That might be a good idea. The cooking has a healing effect, and I think it would be great for the two of them who are tired. If Diane is okay with it, would you also invite Tom and Bill? Why? I think it'd be better if it's just the ladies. I want to see just how clueless they are. I also want to see how they treat you. Really, it seems like they might say something rude. We have our own ways to handle it, don't worry. Alright, I'll invite them. And so, my mother decided to invite my in-laws to her restaurant. First, I talked about this to Megan and Amy. Amy, my mom wants to invite you both to our family restaurant for dinner. Would that be possible? It's a kind offer, but won't we be interrupting their business? That they're closed on Sunday nights, so if you could adjust your schedule, it should work out. Really? In that case, maybe we'll take you up on the offer, right? Amy? Yes, I've been wanting to try your mother's cooking. Isn't it a famous diner in the neighborhood? Well, not really famous, but I can vouch for the taste of the food. Having successfully invited Megan and Amy, I next wanted to discuss inviting my father-in-law and my husband as well. My mother said she'd love for Bill and Tom to come too. Do you think those two will agree easily? Amy seemed concerned. I'm worried about that too. However, Activity unoptimistically said, if you tell them they can eat delicious food for free, they might just agree. Do you think? The two love food and are weak to the word of free. I'm sure they'll agree. Feeling reassured by Megan's words, I decided to talk to Bill and Tom that night. Tom, I have a favor to ask. What is it? She BCE. I so formal. I'd like both of you to come to my parents' home. Isn't that where your mom runs a diner? A yes? But when I went home the other day, my mom said she'd love to invite everyone. Would you like to come? What do you think, Dad? Sounds troublesome. He didn't seem keen, but as Megan had predicted, he changed his tune when I persisted. It's on Sunday night, just for us. My mom said she'll cook special dishes. Of course it's on us. Please come and enjoy the meal. Upon hearing this, Bill's attitude began to change. Isn't that diner quite famous? If you're inviting us so earnestly, maybe we should go. Yeah, Dad. Maybe we should go. We're being invited after all. Being true to Megan's prediction, the word free made Bill and Tom change their minds. Though they acted nonchalantly, saying we'll go, I could sense that they really wanted to go. As expected, Kim, having been married for many years, it seems she knows exactly how to handle her husband. And so, I successfully invited my in-laws to my mother's restaurant. At the following Sunday evening, I returned to my childhood home with them. My mother was quietly cooking in the back of the kitchen, and my father greeted us. Thank you for coming all the way here today to accommodate my wife's wishes. Your meal will be ready shortly, so please wait a moment. My father returned to the kitchen. After the greeting, my mother stopped her cooking to greet us. It's been a while, hasn't it? Since the wedding of the two of you. It's good to see everyone looking well. Then, Megan spoke on behalf of everyone. Thank you for inviting us today. We've wanted to dine here for some time, but the timing never seemed right. Everyone was looking forward to today. My mother, apparently pleased with Megan's words, returned to the kitchen to cook the meal. As soon as she disappeared from view, Bill muttered, "This restaurant and its owner both look old and dirty. I heard his words and my husband joined in the mocking. "You're right, they'll grant. I didn't notice at the wedding, but isn't Diane's mother too old? If I knew the restaurant was this rundown and dirty, I might not have come. Yes, eating in such a filthy place might make us sick." And their insulting remarks grew louder, and finally my mother, who was about to serve the food, overheard them. She placed the dishes heavily on the table. Soon after, my father brought out more dishes. Sensing that they had been overheard, my father-in-law and my husband became restless. "I don't want the likes of you to taste my beloved wife's cooking. Please leave immediately. How rude. You invite us and then tell us to leave. The rudeness is on your side. Don't think you can insult my wife and get away with it." Just with that, my father grabbed Bill and Tom by the arm and dragged them out of the restaurant. Closing the door with a sharp sound, he turned to us with a smile as if nothing had happened. "That's your pmekshmoprat. Now let's eat while the food is still warm." Everyone was stunned by this sudden turn of events. But Megan quickly said, "Let's eat," and a pleasant meal began. And Megan and Amy drank and began complaining about Bill and Tom. They're both so useless. So we run the factory and they don't even notice that the employees hate working under them. I wish Amy would take over the company. Don't you think so, Diane? Just as I thought she was complaining, she turned the conversation to me. I agree with you. It's hard to understand why such a competent person, Amy, is treated this way. She deserves better. Thank you, Diane. I never get used to being bossed around by those two. Because of the two of them, there are still tasks that can't be done efficiently. There are so many things I think I would do differently. My parents smiled as they listened to our complaints. As soon as the complaining stopped, my mother spoke. It was obvious from their behavior earlier that those two are useless. Isn't it time for all of you to take a stand? We'll help you. Thought with a wicked smile. My mother said this. My father nodded in agreement. I had a feeling something was about to change. After the dinner party, things seemed the same for a while. Bill and Tom lounged around the office doing nothing, while Megan worked hard. My parents said it was time to take a stand, but nothing seemed to change. A week passed, and then I received a message from my father. Everything is ready. You can safely break up with Tom. What do you mean by breaking up? Diane, you and Megan will each get divorced. Amy should just sever the ties between parent and child. But if I leave, what will happen to this factory? That's why preparations for the factory have been made. You don't need to worry about anything. His tone was utterly serious. If he says so. I finished my call with my father and told Megan and Amy. Thus, we decided to take action. That night, I resolved to tell Bill and Tom MC and Megan want a divorce. Tom, perhaps thinking I wasn't serious, laughed and said, What are you talking about? If you're talking about severing ties, you mean to divorce, right? I handed the divorce papers to my husband. It's theirs. I gave the divorce papers from Megan. Megan and Amy had already left the house. Yikes. I wondered where they had gone, and they were preparing this. Sire, we'll divorce. Don't come crying back to me later. I wanted to retort his words, but I decided to keep quiet. After they signed the divorce papers, I decided to leave the house as well. Well, a few days later, Bill and Tom showed up at my parents' house. What's going on? Our factory got absorbed in a merger. You must know something. Bill was furious. Tom added, give back our factory. But all the employees have disappeared. What will you do? They yelled loudly. Then my father made his appearance. Do you two know nothing about my workplace? What do we need to know? You're just the owner of this rundown diner, right? With a laugh, my father said, this is who I am, and presented a business card. The president of the major metal processing company. Yes. Our company had a weak point, and it was screws. I heard that the business owner and his successor were incompetent. But thanks to the craftsman and Amy, the product quality was excellent. So we decided to bring it under our company's umbrella. Bill and Tom were stunned. At that point, my father added further to the situation. Atom starting your mans. Now that we've absorbed it, we want to overhaul the management. Thus, in simple terms, we'd like the current president and his successor to resign, and we'll bring in a new president. Bill seemed to come back to his senses. It's my factory. You can't just make me resign. Sadly, we don't have the luxury to employ ineffective personnel. We employ skilled and competent people. It's just common sense. Who can do better than us? That's right. The Bill and Tom still didn't seem to realize their incompetence. They also hadn't noticed that Megan and Amy were quite skilled. So my father announced the new president. At min ordem nyss players, a new president will be Amy. Wow! Their voices overlapped perfectly. They Amy. Thus a woman can't possibly handle being a president. However, all the employees have said that if you two remain in charge, they will quit. Without the craftsmen, how do you intend to continue the screw factory? Bill and Tom were left speechless. They really wanted to have a smooth business partnership. But you two ridiculed my wife in this diner, didn't you? Making fun of what my wife has been working so hard for is unforgivable. People who can only look down on others have no foundation for managing a company. The real reason my father was angry was because they made fun of my mother. Moreover, after listening to the grievances of Megan and Amy, he came up with this idea. With Amy becoming the president and Megan supporting her, the employees would return. It turns out the employees were really fond of them. As for the two pitiful men stripped of their positions as president and successor, they received a small severance pay and were forced out of the screw factory. The two tried to use that severance to start a new business and chose gambling as the means to multiply it. Even though they'd never engaged in gambling before, they invested all their severance money. Needless to say, they lost it all. Their severance vanished into thin air. Option were curious. Now, both of them are working as temporary staff, But the two with their remaining high pride are isolated and don't fit in at their workplaces. On the other hand, with Amy becoming the president, all the employees returned. But from now on, they won't just be making existing screws. They are also focusing on developing new screws that can be used in my father's company. Megan is very enthusiastic about it. As for me, I started working at my father's company. I thought it would be good to work there to understand the situation at Amy and Megan's screw factory. Well, on the personal side, I still get along with Megan and Ermi, and we regularly have girls' gatherings at my mother's diner. My father also wants to join us, but my mother won't let him. So he watches us from afar. That's how things have been for us lately. I want to cherish this relationship in the future. Pity out there. The baby is so noisy, despite it being the middle of a freezing winter night. My husband dragged me out onto the balcony while I held our baby. And then he locked the window from inside so I couldn't get back in. Open this up, please, ignoring my desperate pleas and banging on the window. My husband swiftly downed his whiskey and retreated to the bedroom. That took Secretary Easy Peels. The balcony on the 8th floor of our apartment building was exposed to a chilling north wind, rapidly sapping my body heat. If this continues, the baby will be in danger. My growing anxiety seemed to affect the baby, who cried louder and more incessantly. The more I thought about what would happen next, the more I was overwhelmed with anxiety. I'm Catherine Smith, 33 years old. I married James, who is the same age as me, 4 years ago. We had a son 6 months ago. We were very happy as a couple until I became pregnant. Just around the 5th month of my pregnancy, James's attitude towards me suddenly turned cold. But lately, our arguments have become more frequent, and he always finds reasons to berate me. Just today, he blamed me for resting due to exhaustion from childcare when he came home. You should be awake and waiting for me when I come home. That's a wife's duty. You should be aware that you're being fed. You're useless since you can't even earn money. But it's already past 2 in the morning. I can't stay awake that long. At that remark, I just couldn't hold back. However, just as I was responding, our 6-month-old started crying and wouldn't be soothed. No matter how much I tried, stay out there since you're so loud. Suddenly, with me still holding our child, James pushed us out onto the balcony and locked the door. No matter how hard I banged on the window, he didn't return from the bedroom. Dressed only in pajamas with a cardigan thrown over. I was without my phone and couldn't call for help. Additionally, we're on the 8th floor. There's no way I could descend on my own. The baby, sensing our precarious situation, kept crying. I can't stay out in this freezing wind for much longer. More worried about the baby's well-being than my own. I searched for something to shield us from the wind. I found a blue tarp in a storage box on the balcony and using it. I huddled close, holding the baby tight against the cold. The baby continued crying as if sensing my anxiety, its cries echoing in the chilly night air. I hoped that by morning, James would be in a better mood. But as time wore on, my entire body was shaking uncontrollably from the cold. Eventually, a light drizzle started, and it seemed likely to turn into snow. After a while, I started to feel dizzy and lightheaded. No, if I fall asleep now, it's going to be a disaster. I tried to rouse myself by slapping my cheeks, but my consciousness kept fading. Suddenly, I heard someone calling out to me. "Are you Mrs. Smith? What are you doing out here at this hour?" Unsure as I was scurrying around, not knowing where the voice was coming from, the partition between us and the neighbor on the balcony was removed. And Rebecca, our neighbor, approached me from there with a concerned look. The partition had been cracked during a storm and hadn't been fixed. My husband and I had a fight, and he locked me out here. He's locked the door, and I can't get back in. How could he do that in the middle of a winter night? Come to my place. It's a good thing we hadn't fixed this partition. Rebecca then proceeded to remove the cardboard pieces she had placed to patch the hole in the partition. It was just wide enough for an adult to crawl through if they crouched down. But won't it bother you at this time of night? Don't worry about something so trivial. First, hand me the baby. I entrusted the baby to the hand she extended and gratefully entered her home. Once inside, she wrapped the baby in a warm, soft blanket. But to my surprise, the baby who had been crying until a moment ago calmed down as if it was all a lie and soon started to snore softly. It must have felt warm and comforting. Don't hesitate to sit by the heater. Oh, okay. Thank you. I apologize for intruding in the middle of the night. The argument with James definitely started after 2 a.m. The hands of the clock on the wall now point to 3:30. I must have been on the balcony for about an hour, and I feel as if my hands and feet are numb from the cold. The baby seems fine. I work night shifts, so I'm naturally a night owl. Just relax and stretch your legs. The ching, and so I couldn't help but feel guilty. However, I realized that my early rising mother-in-law would soon be waking up. When I hastily contacted her, she laughed, saying, "Let me guess, you and your husband had a fight." She decided to come over with a spare key. While waiting for my mother-in-law to arrive, I told Rebecca everything that had happened so far. After having a child, James' attitude changed suddenly. He would shout at me for not being good at housework, even though I was a full-time housewife. And whenever our child cried at night, he blamed me. Rebecca listened intently to my story, nodding in understanding. Because I'm not a good mother. I'm always short of sleep and can't do my chores properly. You've been through a lot. You're doing great. Being constantly blamed by James made me think that maybe I was the problem. But her words telling me I wasn't at fault brought tears to my eyes. Just then, I heard a gentle knock at the front door. When I looked at the clock, it was almost 4 a.m. Probably my mother-in-law drove over with the spare key. When Rebecca invited my mother-in-law inside, she repeatedly bowed her head in gratitude and handed over some vegetables she had harvested from her own garden. I'm truly sorry for getting involved in my son and daughter-in-law's fight. When my mother-in-law asked me the reason, I explained everything to her. Her face turned bright red with anger. Who does he think provides his meals? That would be thanks to James. Of course it's to gears and angry at my son. He can't even cook for himself. It's ridiculous for a good-for-nothing like him, who can't even do housework, to look down on a full-time housewife. Acting on his own, James wouldn't be able to live a decent life. Moreover, it's inevitable for a baby to cry at night. I can't believe he's my son for making the baby stay on the balcony. I'm so angry. I feel like steam is coming out of my ears. Realizing that my mother-in-law was on my side, not James's, was a relief. But then she abruptly stood up and said she would wake James and give him a piece of her mind. I held onto her arm, trying to stop her. In about an hour, it'll be the time James usually wakes up. If we disturb his sleep, it might backfire. James, who usually has a hard time waking up, is extremely grumpy in the morning. I felt that possibly waking him up would only make him more stubborn and angry. When I explained, my mother-in-law somehow restrained herself. Oh, the first snow is falling. It was unusually quiet outside, and when I realized a gentle snow had started to fall and was lightly accumulating. Just thinking about if the baby and I had stayed out on the balcony made my spine shiver. It was about time for my husband to wake up. So, I left the baby with Rebecca and my mother-in-law, and I used a spare key to enter our home. However, it was the usual time when he'd be up and brushing his teeth, but he was nowhere to be seen in the washroom. Is he still sleeping? James, get up now, hun? My mother-in-law opened the bedroom door with a loud noise and fervently pulled back the duvet, but James wasn't there either. He wasn't in the bedroom, bathroom, or the toilet. Yet, his suit and shoes were still here, so it didn't seem like he had gone to work. Where could he have gone? That's strange, isn't it? Casually, my mother-in-law, who had opened the curtain to the balcony side, let out a scream. When I ran up to her, my mother-in-law was on the balcony, pointing to the blue sheet I was covering, her mouth agape. From there, I could catch a glimpse of a person's foot. Could it be? Cautiously removing the blue tarp, James was found lying there in just his underwear. Why is he on the balcony? My mother-in-law said that before going to the neighbors, she briefly entered our room. She noticed that the balcony window was open, so she closed it and locked it. But I don't remember seeing James there at that time. I wonder why. My mother-in-law repeatedly shouted, "Oh, come on, wake up," to James. But he seemed to be unconscious. For tweets, we decided to cover him with a blanket to keep him warm, and waited for the ambulance to arrive. I need to inform his company that he won't be coming in. I tried to use James's nearby mobile phone, but it was locked, and I couldn't unlock it. Oh, for fingerprint authentication, just do this. My mother-in-law grabbed the fallen James' hand and quickly unlocked the phone using his finger. What's this? The phone screen had Messenger open, and there was a loving conversation with his mistress written on it. Upon closer inspection, the person he was messaging was my friend, Sarah. Looking back, they seem to have started their affair 6 months ago, around the time I was in the middle of my pregnancy and when James started to become distant. Moreover, there were numerous intimate photos saved in the photo folder. I can't believe they're still seeing each other. The anger bubbled up inside, and to think that the person he was cheating with was my friend. Honestly, what's he thinking? Now that this has happened, we should make him deeply reflect on his actions. Saying that, my mother-in-law smirked and told me about a secret plan. After being urgently transported by the ambulance, various tests and treatments were conducted on James. He regained consciousness after a while, but was advised to stay in the hospital for several days for observation. Where am I? Picking up and looking around with a puzzled expression. When I told him why he was here, he suddenly became furious. I was worried because you disappeared from the balcony. I thought you might have fallen down. When I tried to look down, I slipped and hit my head. But when I came to, the balcony window was closed and it was cold from the falling snow. What would you do if I had died? It's unbelievable that James, who always sleeps in just his underwear after drinking, went out on the balcony wearing nothing at all. It's too bad you didn't go to the other side. You locked the balcony door as revenge, didn't you? No, it was your mother. She probably locked it without noticing you were passed out. What? I couldn't get into the house, so I asked your mother to bring the spare key. James was quite surprised to hear that his mother had come. He kept grumbling about how embarrassing it would be if the relatives found out and how he would get lectured by his mother. By the way, how did you disappear from the balcony? Becca next door noticed and helped me. You never even bothered to bring in the laundry. So you didn't know that the partition board on the balcony was broken, did you? So when she asked why I was on the balcony in the middle of the night, I told her everything. Atran's face turned ghostly pale as he realized not only the relatives but also the neighbors knew about it. Stop messing around, damn woman, or remember this later. He shouted and I handed him his cell phone. You have some nerve to act like that? Of course, the phone had texts and photos of him being affectionate with his affair partner. James looked shocked and went pale, giving off a vibe of this is bad. I can't forgive you for cheating. And it's even more unforgivable to have an affair with my friend. What a lousy woman to peek into someone's phone without permission. I was trying to find a phone number to contact your office, and your messenger chat was left open. Hey, office, you're taking a day off from work today. It's natural to give them a heads up. When I told him I had also explained the whole reason for the leave, he was utterly shocked. Your boss said, that's terrible. I never thought he was that kind of person. I wonder what will happen now. Maybe a demotion or even getting fired. If I get fired, you'll be in trouble too, because we won't be able to make a living. He still blamed me as if everything was my fault. I used to feel guilty about his attitude, but not anymore. I don't care about that. I hate men who cheat, and I can't stand being with someone who endangers even our child. We should break up. You can't do that. Don't joke around. You just need to listen to what I say. He thought he could control me by yelling and being assertive. It was clear that arguing with him was pointless. I will make sure you sign the divorce papers no matter what. I also told him that I had already contacted the husband of his affair partner, who was quite angry and on his way to the hospital. He was a black belt in karate, and that he had mouthed off that an apology was not enough. At first, James looked panicked, but then defiantly said that he couldn't do anything because he was in the hospital. Just then, my mother-in-law arrived with bags for his hospital stay. Oh, you're awake. You good for nothing. It's all because Mom locked the balcony door. It all started when you complained about the baby crying at night and kicked out Catherine, right? Well, seeing him subdued after being scolded by his mother-in-law, I decided to deliver the final blow. That's why I'm filing a police report. But why? You put me and our child in danger. It's only right. There's no need to go that far. It was just a petty marital spat after all. I was the one who suggested getting a divorce and reporting to the police. We almost lost our precious grandchild because of you. You should reflect on your actions in a cold, chilling prison. That said goodbye. Wait, Catherine, a child, needs his father. Let's not get a divorce. Please don't report it to the police. Constance is yours. I don't need a father who would lock us out on a cold balcony in the middle of the night. I don't want to go to jail. Please have mercy. Ignoring my screaming husband, I went straight to the police to file a report. After being discharged from the hospital, he was arrested and is awaiting sentencing. Given what he did, he's bound to face severe punishment. He was understandably fired from his job. After the divorce was finalized, I was paid my share of the property by James. He is jobless and broke. I heard his affair partner divorced her husband too. I've now returned to my parents' home and am living with our son. Perhaps because the agitated father is no longer around. My son has had many more days filled with smiles. Whenever I take him to visit his grandmother, she's overjoyed. To protect this child's adorable smile, I will continue to raise him with plenty of love